Hello everyone, this is Shahid Imran here once again with another podcast. And in today's video, I have invited really one of the special guests from our e-commerce community, and she is one of the greatest. You will find him every time on speaking on the Amazon PPC, and she is really experienced in that. And you will find him speaking in very detail and the reason I thought to invite her because she has really great experience in that niche, and that niche is obviously every everyone talks about that, but she shares really great insights. And first of all, thanks for accepting my invitation.
Yeah,
Welcome.
no, you're very welcome. I appreciate the ask.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start with your introduction.
Yeah. So, hey, which that was a fabulous introduction. I appreciate the kind words and the hype. But yeah, so my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency, which is why I talk so much about Amazon ads because that's literally what we do day in and day out for going on 7 years now. So it's been a hot minute. Yeah, just really excited to hopefully share some insights with your listeners.
So before starting the Amazon agency, you it was your first career, or you were doing something job or something else?
Yeah, so we were small time seller. I can't brag, like multi-million dollar exit or anything really sexy like that. But yeah, we were sellers, which is what led us into the world of Amazon. I always say it's almost like you don't even realize this whole ecosystem and like world going on, and even bigger nowadays. I mean, as far as not just the sellers, but then like the software, the agencies, the freelance, like everyone who's grown up to like help out sellers sell on Amazon. It's like this whole world going on, which is pretty cool to be a part of it.
So since how long, since how many years it's been you have started your own agency, like 5 years, 3 years, 4 years,
Yeah. So it's been, I want to say 6 or 7 years now. Time flies.
6 or 7 years. So you guys are managing completely virtually, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Repeat the question.
So you guys are managing your agency virtually or physical?
Yep.
Virtually. Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, so let's start directly towards our podcast. So I would love to know about. I have prepared some of the questions, and
Hmm.
I will love to know some insights, whatever you want to start for the brand. So let's start with some general questions. Let's suppose there is a brand, and you guys are managing the PPC. How do you do the audit of that brand, and what points really important for you to do an audit of one brand?
That is a fantastic question. And in all my years of doing this, it has to start with the conversation. It really does. The thing that I'm noticing these days is it's harder and harder to run good advertising. Not necessarily because the ads themselves have gotten harder, although I'll admit they're way more complex than when I first got started. So many the options and levers and new ad types. It feels like my head's spinning to keep up, really. But the most difficult thing about advertising these days is really being able to run ads profitably. That is the most difficult thing to get right. And the reason why it's so difficult is just the market's gotten more competitive. And on top of that, Amazon has taken away a lot of the organic spots. So 7 years ago, most of the search page was organic. Yes, we had sponsored ads and there was like a headline ad at the top, but let's be honest, like I don't know, 80% of the page used to be organic. I think it's probably about flipped these days. It's ridiculous. And so there's less organic spots, which means less possibility to get an organic sale, an organic placement. And on top of that, cost per clicks are rising. So, like, all of these things just converge to mean it is really easy to lose money if you don't know what you're doing these days. And so, what we find is that to be able to run effective advertising, you need to be able to get creative. But how to get creative, where to get creative, it really depends on what the brand's looking to do. So for an example, two brands can say my ACoS is too high, I need to bring it down. Okay, strategies of that is, optimizing, make sure we're cutting ad spend without decreases in ad sales. That's pretty straightforward. But if one brand tells me, hey, my ACoS is at 100%, I need to get it to 50%, that's a half. I got to cut it in half. And one brand says, okay, well, I need to bring ACoS down, but I'm running at like 30%. I would like to get it to 25. Well, that's a 5-point decrease, right? Those are two same objective, lower ACoS, completely different difficulty level. Like one is hard mode and the other one is, yeah, it could be hard, but it's not going to take as long. And then, so we always start out with those conversations. What are you looking to do? Where do you want to go? What are your goals? How do you want to get there? How fast do you want to get there? How fast do you need to get there to make your business viable? And then that then shapes our audit. So where I find a lot of ad managers, maybe just because they're green or they don't know any other different way of doing it, is they go right into the ad console and they say, oh, you're not using broad match keywords, or you don't have sponsored brand ads, or you don't have an auto campaign set up for all of your products, or we're not using sponsored display ads. Those things are not bad things to do. If I was evaluating and all I was looking at ad console, I would probably come up with the same list of things. You have way too many keywords, or you have way too many products in your ad groups, or whatever it is. Correct if all we cared about was advertising. The thing is, brands, they care about advertising when it's losing them money. If their ads were profitable, if they were growing sales, if everything else was fine, I can guarantee you they would not care about any of those things, right? They'd be like, I'm making money. You told me I need sponsored brand. Like, why? I'm super profitable. Products are going 20% year over year. Like, why? I don't need that, right? And so it's not a question of what in the ad console is not like the best. Because let's be honest, we've all seen those campaigns that like are not the best structure, and they're crushing it. Performance is great, right? So it's possible to have a structure that's not great and still getting performance. What I want to know is not what's not best practice. What I want to know is what in your advertising is not allowing you to hit your goals. That's a much better question. That's a much better audit. And that's an audit that's going to give you the action steps to be able to improve the account and not just improve the ads.
Okay, so if I ask you a quick question, how many points, how many KPIs do you guys have for auditing? Like 10, 20, are they fixed, or you guys sometimes check more things, and are does depend also on the type of brand?
Yes. That's a good question. So I would argue, I would simplify it to what the brands actually care about, which is two things: sales and profits. That's all. As a business owner, that's all I care about. If you said, oh my gosh, like everything's a mess and like everything is chaos and I need to fix it, yeah, I should probably improve those things. But like, hey, I'm making sales are increasing, and I'm making money. So that's all I care about. So that would be the main thing that we would look at. Now, the easiest way to look at advertising from a profit perspective is typically total ACoS. If you connect the account, if you have the ability on an audit to be able to look at some sort of software that would pull in profits, that's helpful. But there's other things that impact profits, like inventory fees, additional fees going up, overstock, those kind of things. So it can be a little bit misleading to say, oh, it's an ad problem. Sometimes it's a mismanagement of inventory problem, or the product got shifted into being like an oversized product or something. So the easiest way to look at it is through total ACoS. So I would say that the two things really would look at is how are sales trending over time, as well as recently over time. So it's looking at multiple date ranges, and then like, are there products that we're not profitable on from a total ACoS perspective? The other thing,
So,
though, is that you probably have about 10 different. So not only do I want to know, am I doing this? I want to know why it's happening, because that's what brains are really coming to it. So like, I can see that my sales and profit aren't great. I can tell you where that is. The problem that I'm coming to you with is I don't know how to fix it. Like, I don't know why it's happening, and I can't fix it. And so while we look at two numbers to figure out where the problems are, you're probably looking at those 10, 15, 20 other data points to say, like, okay, why is it happening? And then be able to diagnose it.
Okay, that's making sense actually. So, as a US sellers, they are not really much educated. If you check them, if you do them the order of their brands, if you check their whole businesses, if someone else is managing their whole business, you have noticed, you will notice actually, you have already noticed actually. So when we check their brands, we come to know oftentimes they have sourced with high prices,
Mm-hmm.
like from China. From China. So as a PPC agency, how do you guys manage it while in audit, or every time you can't can work on eCommerce? eCommerce we have to, obviously you have to work on the optimization of the supply chain there, and that is a backbone of your brand.
It's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. That's one of the hardest things. Being an ad manager is knowing how to navigate those situations where, like you said, there's not a high profit percentage, is what you're saying, and so that results in a high ACoS most times, or just an ACoS that's unsustainable. And really, it goes back to having that conversation. And what I find in those cases is that there's a misalignment of between the brands and then the ad managers. And both sides aren't necessarily wrong. I mean, so the dynamic is the brand's going, this is what I need from you. Like, this is what's going to make my business work. And you as an ad manager are going, I can't do that. What you're asking of me is impossible. So the ad manager's upset, the brand's upset. You end up with this whole mess of stuff. Instead of going back to there is definitely an education piece of that, or just oftentimes there is a misunderstanding from the brands on what needs to happen to make the numbers happen that they want. And so I'm a huge fan of forecasting here, or building, like we've built out several like forecasting tools or like analysis tools that allows us to just illustrate like, hey, it's a mathematics game. And so when you can just help the brand understand like, hey, these are the mathematics of what it is that you're asking from me. Because basically what needs to happen to hit a low ACoS is I need to be able to lower my ad spend and still maintain the same amount of ad sales. If I lower my ad spend and ad sales go down, I'm going to end up with less sales at the same ACoS, which is like not great. And so the function that I typically do is the most effective to lower ad spend is through bid optimization. So lower the bid, which seems very simple. So at the end of the day, I can tell you the calculations. Like if your cost per click is this, and this is your conversion rate, then this is what we're going to do to hit your target ACoS. That's very simple. I can forecast that for you all day long. There's bid optimizations that are a revenue per click model. Super simple. If that was all of our job, that was all we had to do. We just say, hey, let's figure out what bid you need for this, and we'll just put it in there and that'll work, right? The problem is that we're up against market conditions. So in the beginning, when I was saying it's getting really, really hard to run profitable ads, that's why. It's because their competitors are willing to pay a higher cost per click. I've seen it all the time where it's like cost per clicks are like $8. And somebody's like, why? Like, who's willing to pay $8? I don't know. I just know somebody is. And if somebody's willing to pay it, Amazon's like, why would I take your 50 cents if somebody else is going to pay me $8? Like, I'll take $8, right? They're about making money. And so really the difficult part and the thing you need to navigate is, where can I get clicks and the volume at a cost per click that I can afford if this is my target ACOS. And really, sometimes the bid that you need due to the target ACOS being too low, or the product's conversion rate being too low, or the market trends being really competitive, sometimes you just can't get traffic at the cost you can afford to pay. And that becomes a very difficult situation. And so I sympathize with both the brands and the account managers. So it's really just looking at like raw hard data, helping to interpret it for the brand, and then saying, okay, is there a way, can we go up a little bit in ACOS? Can we bring it down a little bit over time? Is there a way you can work on things that are conversion rates that will increase our conversion rate? That way we can afford, like ACOS is going to improve once conversion rates go up. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. But what we found is that it really just takes a collaborated effort.
Yeah, okay. So you were mentioning about the managing it through the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your insights about that? Managing PPC manually by on bulk files or on through other channels, or managing through tools. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, although I'm insanely good friends with a lot of like really good people who run some amazing software. That being said, I'm gonna hate on software a little bit. Full automation, I guess, is what I would say.
Okay.
From my experience over the years and with what we've done, full automation. Now, I'm not talking something that allows you to input your own rules or have, some sort of influence. But a lot of those systems where it's like, hey, we saw them like they were absolutely crushing it. Was like 3 years ago. Everybody had an AI tool, and they're like, hey, just hook up your account to my AI tool, and it'll run everything for you, and you're never gonna have to think about it. And like all of your sales are gonna come in, and everything is gonna be amazing. And what happened is people hooked it up. It worked for some accounts. It didn't work for others. And then over time, a lot of accounts found that, wait a minute, because I have such little control over what the system is doing, and the market is getting way more competitive, I need to be insanely strategic with what I'm doing. The abilities of this tool do not allow me to make the moves that I need to make. So that is where my problems come in with full automations, is when the system takes over for you so much that you get stuck in this sort of, you get boxed in. And of course, like I have a viewpoint of a lot of the brands where it hasn't worked for them. So I will completely admit that I'm like very, very biased when it comes to this, because we often have these brands come to us and they're like, look, I've been trying to scale, but the system, like, I've heard this from so many brands. Like, I knew this was my ranking keyword. I set up this campaign. I got it to rank, and then I let the system take over to optimize it, and it lowered all the bids, and I lost my ranking. Like, because again, it's optimizing for a very minute thing in ACOS. And the thing is, if you want to make the system do what you want it to do, you essentially have to like increase that ACOS target. But like, my goal is not ACOS. My goal is sales. So there has to be some sort of like ability to optimize for something else. Like, yes, you want to take ACOS into account, but that's not the only thing we're focused on, because there's other goals outside of just ACOS. And so that's what happens within these systems, is like there's a spend goal, there's an ACOS goal, there's some kind of goal that's like not always the thing that you want to optimize for. And in fact, a lot of times it ends up like, I've heard some brands are like, I want to spend more money and I can't get the system to spend my money. Like, what is going on? Or like, why is it putting all these random keywords in here? These make no sense for the brand. Or like, these keywords that were our main keywords, it's like over optimize them and I can't get the system to like retest. It's like you end up with so many scenarios where you're boxed in. And so I think any system needs to have human oversight. At some point, the robots are going to join up with us and AI will take over the world, and we hope that it loves humankind and is not like Terminator. But up until when that day happens, we need some sort of human input to the system to say, look, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. So things like where you have like those rule-based systems or like, okay, if this, then that, if this, then that, like those are fine as long as, again, you want to keep an eye on them. Any system shouldn't run without any kind of oversight. Personally, we use a lot of internally built tools that allow us to leverage, automations are great for things at scale, but where they break down is in those like really minute, intuitive optimizations. And so I think if you can build a system with the best of both worlds, that's what we'd want to use.
Okay, so I have one more question that's really interesting. You have explained really, really well comparison in between humans look over and the system itself. So I have one more question actually. So what is your experience as you have managed it very, very well about day parting, like in the United States brands? And we have to suppose different categories. Let's suppose you can suppose different categories. And what is your experience in Dayparting?
Good question. So my experience with Dayparting, or the thing I will say about Dayparting, is it is a tool. It is not going to be your saving grace. The times where I have not seen it work is when a brand is suffering because like you said, the market's competitive. They can't bring down costs. They can't figure out a way to optimize ad spend, again, due to market competition or poor product performance. Any advertising strategy is not going to fix a poor product. Let me be very clear there. Now, there are strategic out of the box things you can do. There's ways that you can like there's a better way and a worse way to do it. So I'm not saying there's nothing we can do, but it's not going to fix it. So the times where I have not seen Dayparting work is where someone said, oh, my ad spend's way too high. Dayparting saved me. And they go try and like, as a tool or as a way to like fix a really poor performing ad account. It's not going to do that. What it will do is it will optimize an account. It will optimize ad spend. So we've tried it with mixed results. We have tested it in some accounts. Like it's worked okay. Sometimes it's not worked okay. Others, I don't see it as like a bulletproof solution. We use a tool that allows us to pull a report to analyze like the times of day, even by per product or even by individual campaign if we wanted to, and say like, okay, is there a time in the day where we have statistically significant data? If you have one click on 1 hour, that is not statistically significant. So if you're like, oh, I want to analyze this ranking campaign, if you only have one click at like 2 a.m., I can't tell you as a definitive answer that 2 a.m. does not convert well for you. You have one click. Nobody has the 100% conversion rate, right? So we need enough clicks to be able to say, okay, this does work, this doesn't work, providing we have enough data. And we can see like a very obvious pattern in which it would make sense to apply Dayparting. That's when we'll go and we'll test Dayparting. But again, I'm a huge fan of being data driven. And so I never like to go off of, well, I think, or it kind of seems like, just I'll do your general optimizations with the ads that we know are bulletproof and we know work. And then when you have data to do it, I would test Dayparting.
So we cannot even can say if that is a baby category, you can try it, or if that is a category like automotive or something like if there is a something like people do need it mostly in that specific time, or there is no there can be scenarios, but it's not like a tool for saving the life of a drowning brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question to ask, right? Like, is there a specific time? Like, have you noticed some obvious correlations? Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say, like, I don't have any obvious, like, okay, in this scenario, we've seen it. So I would just say pull the reports and see. And there's actually free reports. If you go inside Amazon, only for sponsored product ads, but you can pull a sponsored product campaign report, and that will give you hourly data. And so you can run like pivot tables and then see like over time. So that's like a free resource if you want to. I mean, it's not going to cost you anything, a couple hours of your time. I would download the report, run a couple pivot tables, say like, do I have enough data to make a decision? And if you do, great, test it. And if you don't, or you're like, well, I ran the analysis.
So, okay, that's actually a very sensible answer of that question. So let me ask another almost associated question with that. That is actually from a campaign side. Like if there is a campaign that is running very smoothly, as brand do test their marketing side too, uh, test it anew. Like there is the same keyword, one keyword we are running ads and we have to test, and that is running really that is doing really great. So do you guys also do the A/B testing on some with some other creatives or some other ways to test it to improve the more conversion, or is there any ways do you guys follow?
So you mean in sponsored brand ads specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a great, like, we do, I will say, like, it's not true A/B testing.
Okay.
I hope Amazon rolls it out. Like, Amazon's give us actual A/B testing for sponsored brand ads. That's why, like, you know how Amazon did roll out like A/B testing for listings, right? That was phenomenal because it's a true A/B test. They're saying, okay, let's show this version, let's show this version, and make sure that it's like a true one-to-one test. If you change out the creatives or you change anything, that's not like a true A/B test. So, like, I mean, because impressions can change, who they're showing it to changes, like where it's showing up on the page. There's way too many variables. What I will say is not a bad idea to test improving creatives from Amazon. If you read Amazon's documentation, when you want to test, I'll just tell you what their recommendations are, is they recommend testing the same thing with in the same campaign with a different ad group is how Amazon recommends you test it. Again, it's not a true A/B test, but I mean, that's kind of what we've done. So you can like copy the ad group and then just change the creatives and then, you know, see if it performs better. Yes. So should we be improving our creatives and sponsored brand ads? Yes. Is there a really good way to test definitively which one works? Not really. But you just, I mean, you try it and then hopefully you get some data out of it. Not always, though.
Okay, so yeah, that is something like we have to try, but there is no some very much ways, so you can do that. So I have got there is one my friend. He has left a question on our social media like LinkedIn. He is asking if Amazon algorithm if Amazon algorithm get confused and because of that many irrelevant keywords are being clicked because of the strategy we used earlier. Because Amazon algorithm is getting confused the way we used in earlier in past our campaigns. He's trying to say how to fix it, how we can fix it.
Do you
You can
mind
check that question also on
repeating?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, so the part I'm trying to clarify is how is he asking about it getting confused?
You can check the real question on the LinkedIn actually.
Oh, okay. Do you have the link to
Yeah,
that? I'll check it out real quick.
yeah,
Because I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly. Because
yeah,
technically,
yeah.
the algorithm doesn't get confused, but it might just be the
Okay.
wording. Let me check it out.
You have got it?
Did you send me the link somewhere?
Let me send you a message actually. I'm sending you a message. You can click on my
Oh, perfect.
recent post. You have got it.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a recent post.
Okay, I see the post. Let me. All right, so
All
if
right.
Amazon algorithm gets confused. Okay. So this is so the wording is what threw me off, but no, he's correct. So the question is, if the Amazon algorithm gets confused and because of the many irrelevant keywords getting clicked because of the strategy which the brand used earlier, how do I fix it? That's actually a really good question, and I have a horror story for you on how this went really bad. So the wording on like get confused is a little bit misleading, not misleading here, could make you think like Amazon algorithm got it wrong. It's not necessarily getting it wrong, because what happens is the algorithm actually will prioritize when you're getting good sales and good click-through rates. So in the scenario in which I'm going to say is like the horror story, what ended up happening is the brand started getting advertised on like category keywords, and it actually ended up getting a bunch of sales and a really good click-through rate. So what happened is the product ended up ranking on this keyword, which you think would be great because all of a sudden they're making a ton of sales. But then what ended up happening is when the shoppers got the product, they realized like, wait a minute, I said I searched for this function and this product does not have this function. So they started to get a ton of returns, and it was like horrible. I was consulting with the brand. They were telling me about this, and I'm like, my heart like sunk. So they dealt with like these huge returns, massive backlog in the inventory. It was horrible. So that would be like the worst case scenario of it happening. The one thing I would say is, unless you have a horrible scenario like that, where like you're getting returns and it's like negatively affecting your brand, like these people who are so upset, they're leaving tons of negative reviews because they're like, I found it on this thing and like you said it had this thing and it doesn't have this thing, right? Unless that is happening and you're seeing like a very negative effect, I don't really care where I'm getting sales, honestly. Like, sales are sales. If they come through a keyword that like I would have never thought to advertise on that, but you know what's good? I'm making it like, watch your returns, watch your negative reviews, make sure it's not negatively affecting. So one thing I would say, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But the one thing, if you really need to correct for it, and I'll be honest, it's not a really easy or quick correction, it would be to identify the irrelevant keywords. You want to make sure if they're popping up in autos, like it sounds like the product's got an index for something that like they don't want it showing up on. So you're going to want to make sure you keep up with your negative keywords, make sure you're adding them to everything. You know, broad match is going to trigger it, phrase match, like everything's going to start. So identify like the root words or something and make sure you clear those out. And then just make sure that you go aggressively after the keywords that do work for the products. So that's really, and then at that point, you just kind of have to wait for, the algorithm is super smart. There's a lot of people who talk about like, if you get the honeymoon phrase wrong, it's never going to be corrected, and Amazon is never going to understand your product, and like everything is terrible, and if like you missed this 1-2 week window, your product is completely screwed. That's not true. The Amazon algorithm is insanely smart. It works over time. It looks at shopper interactions to help identify and categorize products. So over time, things do improve if you have a good product and if you are making sales on the correct keywords. They will improve. Now, if you're not making sales and nobody likes the product, and that's a whole nother story. We're assuming the product's good. So I would say over time, things will improve. Just make sure you're like adding negatives and not advertising on those keywords.
Okay, that's great. That's great. That is a really nice way to answer such question. So
Yeah,
you
it's
have
a good
answered it
question.
and very, yeah. Okay, thanks to him. So, what the last tip would you love to give those who are managing the PPC? Like they are not sellers, but they are managers of PPC. They are managing the accounts. What tip really do you have for them?
I would give you, I'm going to simplify it, and I'm going to say something that will hopefully get people's wheels turning. I'm gonna attempt to make advertising sound super simple, because at the end of the day, it
Okay.
kind of is. Good
Okay.
advertising is about good spend management. That's all we're doing. We're managing spend. When it comes to optimizing the accounts, there's two things you can do. There's two actions you can take, which is what
Okay.
it's probably a better way to say it. Those two actions are, you can do more or you can do less in terms of ad spend. So doing more would be increasing your bids, increasing your budgets, adding placement percentage increases, launching additional keywords. Think of like anything that is going to add more ad spend into the account. Or we can pull back and we can do less. So on flip side, right? Negative keywords, pausing keywords, decreasing budgets, decreasing bids, lowering placement percentages, pausing campaigns, like all of the things that reduce the ad spend in the account. Now the question is when and where, and that's the hard part. But really, it's when you're faced with an account. I know I did it. You know, you dig into the account, and like all of a sudden, at ACOS, you did optimizations yesterday, and you go and check on it today, and ACOS increased by 5 points, and like your heart drops because you're like, I swear I did the right thing. What the heck is going on, right? It's a constant fluctuating dynamic. But what you really want to start to understand is where it's all about being able to leverage the ad spend to grow sales, both ad sales and total sales. So what I want to do in the do more category is, where can I add additional ad spend that I have the most data to support that this is a good move? So do I have a keyword that's working really well? Can I increase that? Do I have a product that's working really well? Maybe that's where I add the campaigns. What is working, or where do I have data to show something is working and I'm doing more of? And then in the do less category, I want to work backwards from the stuff that, again, sales are key here. We're leveraging the ad spend to drive sales. So I want to know, when I'm cutting and when I'm doing less, where can I cut that is going to have the least impact on that sales growth? So that is being very, very careful of what you're doing with the ranking keywords, which is why we talked about automations. And it's just like cutting things willy-nilly, and you're like, that's not what I needed to cut. That's driving sales, right? So you be very careful with the things that are driving sales, and you be ruthless with the things that are not driving sales. And so that's what it's really, it's understanding the impact of the ads on the sales, and then being able to really understand, okay, what is my, do I do more? Do I do less? Do I leave it alone? In a nutshell, that's what we're doing. Now, I'm sure all the ad managers listening were like, that's way too simplified. When I actually go into the ad console, there's way too much to check. But I like, if you can start thinking about it through that lens, like simplified, focused in, I think that'll really help you a lot.
Okay, that's great. Okay, it's really, really helpful, and obviously we have covered lots of things, and so far we have done our time as we have discussed. So I think we should end it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks
No, it was
for
a great
being here
conversation.
today.
I appreciate you having me
Yeah,
on.
really, and I appreciate you were here, and I had enjoyed really, really some of the questions, very frankly speaking. Okay.